Research log. Station date 7249.3. Chief Medical Officer Blasner recording. The human walked into my medical bay today. Just walked right in. Through the level 4 containment barrier, wearing nothing but their standard issue station jumpsuit. No protective gear, no atmospheric filters, no radiation shielding, nothing. I must pause here to explain something rather important. I am the Chief Medical Officer of the Galactic Research Station Epsilon 12, the most advanced toxic environment research facility in the known universe. Our station specializes in studying the most caustic, deadly, and downright nasty planetary atmospheres ever discovered. The kind that would melt your bones if you were lucky enough to still have bones after your flesh dissolved. Every member of our research team wears the pinnacle of protective technology. Commander Prixis insists on triple-layered environment suits, complete with backup systems for the backup systems. Dr. Lithera, our lead environmental scientist, practically lives in her protective bubble. Even Security Chief Corax, with his reinforced exoskeleton, won't go near the containment zones without full gear. But this human, Novachen, she blinked those weird, water-filled eyes at me and said, "Sorry, was I supposed to wear something special?" I nearly shed my outer membrane in shock. The atmospheric readout for this section, I sputtered through my respirator, shows traces of sulfuric acid, methane, and at least 3 compounds that don't even have names in Standard Galactic. Novachen checked her datapad, frowning slightly. "Oh yeah, I saw that. But the concentrations are pretty low. Back on Earth, I worked in environments way worse than this. Have you ever been to New Jersey? I had to check my medical scanner 3 times. Not only was she surviving, but her vital signs were completely normal. My tentacles trembled as I recorded the readings. Here we were, spending billions of credits on protective technology. And this Deathworlder was treating our most secure containment zone like a pleasant spring day on a resort planet. Commander Prixis had warned me about humans when we accepted Novachen's research application. They come from a planet that should be impossible to inhabit, he said, waving his sensory stalks in disbelief. Their atmospheric requirements alone break several laws of biochemistry. I thought he was exaggerating. After all, how dangerous could a species be when they consisted mostly of water? Now, watching Novachen casually inspect our toxic sample storage while humming something she called show tunes, I realized we had severely underestimated these humans. "Should we begin your medical orientation?" I asked, trying to maintain my professional composure. "Sure thing, Doc," Nova replied cheerfully. "But first, is it okay if I take off these boots? They're kind of pinching my toes." "I think I need a drink, something strong, preferably with all 3 of my livers involved." Computer end log entry. And please note, requisition order for human strength sedatives may be necessary. For the medical staff. Research log, station date 7249.8. Chief Medical Officer Blasnar recording. Priority 1 emergency report. I need to document this while my neurons are still firing correctly, because no one will believe what happened today. The Galactic Safety Board is going to have my tentacles for breakfast. It started as a routine atmospheric test in Chamber 3. Dr. Lithera was introducing samples from the newly discovered planet Exo 3942b, a delightful little death ball, where the rain is made of hydrochloric acid and the clouds consist of crystalline microshards. Standard procedure required 3 layers of containment fields and full environmental suits, rated for apocalyptic conditions. Novachen showed up in shorts and a tank top. "It's too hot for the jumpsuit today," she explained, while munching on something called a protein bar. I was about to explain, for the 47th time, why this was absolutely unacceptable, when the unthinkable happened. Chamber 3's primary containment field flickered. Then the secondary field went dark. The tertiary backup lasted exactly 2.3 seconds before failing spectacularly. Security Chief Corax's exoskeleton locked up in panic. Commander Prixis's sensory stalks retracted so fast they probably got whiplash. Dr. Lithera started screaming evacuation protocols through her protective bubble. "And Novachen?" She looked up from her datapad and said, Oh shoot, that's not good. Before any of us could stop her, though honestly, who would want to go near that chamber now? She jogged over to the emergency manual override. The access panel was already starting to corrode from the leaking atmosphere. "Nova!" I shouted through the station-wide comm. "The atmospheric readings are off the charts. The metal is literally dissolving." She shrugged. "Yeah, but someone's got to fix it before the whole station gets contaminated, right?" Then this absolute madwoman typed in the override code, opened the panel, and stuck her bare hands into the acid-drenched controls. "The insulation's shot," she reported casually, while I watched in horror as droplets of what should have been flesh-melting acid rolled off her skin like water. "But I think I can bypass the main power coupling. Anyone got a wrench?" Commander Prixis fainted. His sensory stalks had never popped back out. 20 minutes later, Nova had manually restored the containment fields, jury-rigged a new power system, and saved approximately 67 billion credits worth of research equipment. She had acid burns on her station shorts and complained that her protein bar had gotten soggy. The mandatory medical examination afterward nearly crashed our diagnostic systems. Nova's skin showed mild irritation, from exposure to chemicals that could dissolve reinforced starship hull plating. Her blood work revealed trace amounts of toxins that her body was already processing and eliminating, like they were nothing more than mild inconveniences. "Your epidermis," I said, checking the readings for the 8th time. "It actually adapts to chemical exposure?" "Oh yeah," Nova nodded, now wrapped in a standard medical blanket because we had insisted on decontamination protocols. "Human skin is pretty neat that way. Calluses, you know." "Back in grad school, I built up a nice resistance working with similar stuff." "Similar stuff," I repeated weakly. "Well, not exactly the same. Earth chemicals are a bit different, but honestly, the air quality in this station is better than my old apartment in Pittsburgh." "This is unprecedented," Dr. Lithera declared from inside her protective bubble, which she had upgraded to triple thickness. "We must document everything. The implications for xenobiology alone." "Cool," Nova replied, standing up. "But can we do it later? The cafeteria is serving something called Zentorian spice pods today, and I want to try them." "Those are toxic to 89% of known species," Security Chief Corax mentioned, his exoskeleton finally unlocking. "Awesome! I love spicy food!" I made 3 additions to my medical log that day. 1. Requisition more human-strength sedatives, for everyone except Nova. 2. Update station safety protocols to include a new category, human nonsense. 3. Start research into human-grade stomach medication. I have a feeling we're going to need it. Computer, end log, and please note, someone needs to revive Commander Prixis. His sensory stalks are still hidden, and he's missing all the fun. Research log, station date 7250.2. Chief Medical Officer Blasner recording, Special Research Initiative on Human Resilience. The Galactic Science Council has been breathing down our respiratory tubes since the Chamber 3 incident. They've demanded extensive documentation of Nova Chen's capabilities. I suspect several council members believe we've been drinking fermented nutrient solution and hallucinating the whole thing. Today's test started with basic environmental resistance trials. We exposed sample cells from 20 different species to various toxic compounds. The Rigelian tissue dissolved instantly. The Zentorian sample crystallized. The Proximan cellular matrix exploded, rather spectacularly, I might add. Nova's cells, they built a barrier and started producing protective proteins. When we increased the toxicity, they adapted. When we added radiation, they repaired themselves. When we introduced corrosive elements, they essentially told us to go pound sand. "That's just basic cellular homeostasis," Nova explained, watching her cells through our quantum microscope. "Though I gotta say, the resolution on this thing is way better than what we had in my old lab." Dr. Lithera, now wearing 2 protective bubbles simultaneously, couldn't contain her scientific excitement. "But the metabolic processes involved, the energy requirements alone should be—" "Oh, yeah, that reminds me," Nova interrupted, pulling out another protein bar. Anyone want one? They're peanut butter flavored. The containment alarms went off immediately. Apparently this peanut butter substance registers as a biological weapon in our security systems. Next came the atmospheric pressure tests. We discovered that Nova could survive in pressures that would crush most species into quantum paste. She called this not too bad and compared it to something called scuba diving. The temperature resistance trials were equally baffling. Nova complained it was a bit chilly in environments cold enough to freeze atmospheric nitrogen. Then she walked through a chamber hot enough to melt lead, asking if anyone wanted coffee, because she was going to make a fresh pot anyway. The radiation tests. Well, I'm still trying to understand how she metabolizes certain radioactive isotopes. She claims it's probably fine, and mentions something about bananas being naturally radioactive on Earth. The Galactic Science Council's representative, High Researcher Vix, arrived halfway through our trials. They watched in stunned silence as Nova casually handled materials that required our most sophisticated containment protocols. "This is impossible," Vix declared, their ceremonial science robes quivering with indignation. "No species can evolve such broad-spectrum resistance. The evolutionary pressures required would be—" "Oh man, you should see what tardigrades can do," Nova chimed in. "They're these tiny Earth creatures that can survive pretty much anything. Space vacuum? No problem. Extreme pressure? They love it. Total dehydration? They just curl up and nap it off." Vix's colour shifted through 7 shades of disbelief. "Your planet harbours multiple species with these capabilities. Well, yeah, Earth's kind of intense. You should see what happens during our severe weather seasons, or rush hour traffic." The medical data we've compiled is already causing controversy in the galactic scientific community. Nova's baseline readings would indicate critical organ failure in any other species. Her normal body temperature would be classified as severe fever. The electrical activity in her nervous system resembles a controlled plasma storm. And then there's the digestion trials. "You ferment plants and then voluntarily consume the resulting toxins?" Commander Prixis asked, his sensory stalks finally emerging after 3 days of hiding. "You mean beer?" Nova laughed. "Wait until I tell you about hot sauce collections." Security Chief Corax had to excuse himself when Nova explained the concept of competitive eating. His exoskeleton started glitching at the phrase Ghost Pepper Challenge. The Galactic Science Council has officially classified human biological processes as aggressively efficient and unnecessarily robust. They've also suggested updating the definition of toxic to include the phrase "except for humans," who probably consider it a condiment. I've had to start a separate database just for documenting Nova's casual violations of what we previously considered universal biological constants. Currently, we're at 2,947 entries and counting. "You know what's really wild?" Nova mentioned during today's tests. "I'm not even particularly tough by human standards. Back home, I knew this guy who used to do extreme environment photography. He'd go swimming in volcanic lakes just to get the perfect shot." The Science Council representative had to be sedated after that comment. "Computer, end log entry. And please note, requisition more sedatives. The regular kind won't work anymore. We're building up a tolerance from overuse. Emergency log, station date 7250.9. Chief Medical Officer Blazenow recording. Multiple containment breaches in progress." If anyone finds these recordings, assuming the station doesn't dissolve into a puddle of exotic chemicals, I want to state for the record that none of this was my fault. Also, humans are absolutely insane. The crisis began during what should have been a routine transfer of samples from the gas giant XO 4721. Simple procedure. Move highly pressurized containers of atmosphere that's basically liquid lightning mixed with metallic hydrogen, nothing we haven't done 1,000 times before. Then everything went wrong at once. The magnetic containment fields failed. The backup systems crashed. The emergency protocols glitched. And because the universe has a twisted sense of humor, it happened right when we were transferring the most volatile samples we've ever collected. Station alarms blared as toxic gases started filling the lower levels. Commander Prixis's voice crackled over the emergency channel. All personnel, emergency evacuation. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not. The transmission cut off as another system failed. Through the observation windows, I watched in horror as caustic clouds began eating through the containment doors. Security Chief Corax's exoskeleton was making sounds I didn't even know were possible. The evacuation pods are on the other side of that corridor. We're trapped. Dr. Lithera's protective bubbles were starting to show stress fractures. The atmospheric concentration is beyond critical. Even our suits won't hold up for more than a few minutes. That's when Nova Chen, who had been calmly finishing her lunch, stood up and asked, "So we just need to get to the main environmental control room and restart the scrubbers, right?" "The control room is 6 levels down," I shouted, my tentacles waving in panic. "Through corridors filled with atmosphere that could dissolve a battleship." Cool. I needed some exercise anyway. These station donuts are going straight to my hips. Before anyone could stop her, though by now we should have known better, Nova grabbed a datapad and a small toolkit. She paused at the door, turning back to us with a grin that will haunt my nightmares. "Hey, Doc, what's the worst that could happen?" "You could die," we all screamed in unison. "Nah, this is nothing. You should see the subway tunnels back home." And then she was gone, jogging into a toxic hell that our sensors couldn't even properly measure anymore. We watched through the security feeds as she made her way down, stopping occasionally to manually override locked doors or repair critical systems. "Status update," she called over her comm. "Good news and bad news. Bad news is the main processor for the environmental systems is completely fried. Good news is I think I can hotwire it using parts from my music player and that weird tentacle massage thing someone left in the break room." Commander Prixus's sensory stalks retreated so far they probably reached another dimension. For the next 45 minutes, we watched as Nova performed what she called aggressive engineering on our multi-billion credit environmental control system. The security footage showed her literally holding live power conduits together with her bare hands, redirecting toxic flows by manually turning valves, and at one point using her protein bar wrapper as an emergency conductor. The human pain tolerance data was not exaggerated, Dr. Lithera whispered, recording everything for posteriority. "Look at how she ignores the chemical burns." "Those will heal before dinner," I replied, having learned way too much about human regenerative abilities lately. Finally, Nova's voice crackled through our comms again. "Okay, I've got good news, weird news, and really weird news. Good news, I fixed the environmental controls. Weird news, I had to rebuild half the circuitry using Earth logic, so it might start playing something called disco music every time it runs the purification cycle. Really weird news, I think some of these gases are actually kind of tasty, like spicy air." The evacuation pods remained untouched that day. Instead, we gained a new set of safety protocols, specifically labeled, "In case of catastrophic failure, find the nearest human." Later, during the mandatory medical examination, which Nova tried to skip because she felt fine, I discovered that her exposure to the toxic atmosphere had resulted in improved lung capacity. "Oh yeah," she nodded, already changing back into her casual clothes. "That happens sometimes. Adaptive response to environmental stress. Pretty basic stuff." "Basic?" Security Chief Corax's voice cracked. "You walked through liquid lightning." "More like a light drizzle of lightning. Besides, I was wearing shoes." The Galactic Safety Board's investigation team arrived the next day. They took one look at our logs, asked Nova to demonstrate her repair method, then immediately classified the entire incident under inexplicable human phenomena. Nova's only complaint about the whole ordeal: "The toxic gas ruined my protein bar. Anyone know where I can get more peanut butter in this sector of space? Computer, end emergency log, and please note, update station recreation facilities to include what Nova calls a gym." Apparently she needs somewhere to burn off excess energy when not saving all our lives through sheer human audacity. P.S. The environmental control system actually does play disco music during purification cycles now. Nova calls it "Stayin' Alive," and insists it's thematically appropriate. Research log. Station date 7251.4. Chief Medical Officer, Blazenar, recording. The Galactic Science Council called an emergency session today. The topic, humans, specifically how we've been completely wrong about everything we thought we knew about them. The council chambers were packed. Representatives from every major species had gathered to review our findings about Nova Chen's capabilities. The presentation consisted mostly of security footage showing Nova casually defying the laws of biology, chemistry, and common sense. We must reconsider our classification of Earth, High Researcher Vix announced, their science robes now reinforced with protective plating. It's not just a death world, it's a crucible of evolution that produces beings who treat our most dangerous environments like a relaxing spa day. The evidence was undeniable. Our research station, supposedly the most hazardous facility in known space, had become Nova's personal playground. The toxic sample storage, her shortcut to the cafeteria, the radiation containment zone, her preferred spot for catching up on paperwork because it was nice and quiet. Security Chief Corax presented his revised safety protocols, which now included a section titled, What to do when humans ignore all previous protocols. Rule 1. Don't try to stop them. You'll only make them curious. Rule 2. Keep recording. The footage will be invaluable for future research. Rule 3. Have medical staff on standby, not for the humans, for everyone else who might faint. Commander Prixis, whose sensory stalks had finally learned to stay extended around Nova, shared our new environmental testing procedures. We now have 2 classifications for toxic environments, lethal and human-rated. If a human calls it not too bad, evacuate immediately because it's probably worse than we can measure. Dr. Lithra's presentation on human cellular adaptation nearly caused a riot in the Biological Sciences Division. Their bodies don't just resist toxic environments, she explained from within her now customary triple bubble arrangement. They get stronger from exposure. It's like their entire species took all our careful research about survival limitations and decided to use it as a checklist for things to overcome. The engineering corps was particularly interested in Nova's emergency repair techniques. She handled live power conduits, their chief exclaimed, and her solution was to grab them and reconnect them manually. Yes, I confirmed. She called it giving it the old college try. What's a college? I'm afraid to ask. The Council's final ruling was unprecedented. All research stations were ordered to update their safety parameters to include human protocols. Environmental suits would now carry a warning label. Notice: humans may ignore this equipment. This does not mean you can, too. Most significantly, they created a new classification for Earth-based life: aggressively adaptable. The official definition includes the phrase, capable of treating lethal conditions as mild inconveniences. Nova's response to all this attention? She submitted a research proposal to study what she called actually dangerous environments. The Council is still trying to understand her suggestion about exploring something called Australia. I don't get what the big deal is, she told me during her weekly checkup, which she only attends because I bribe her with Earth recipe coffee. Humans are pretty normal where I come from. You should meet my grandmother. She gardens in Death Valley for fun. And I've stopped trying to explain that nothing about humans is normal by galactic standards. Instead, I've started a new research paper titled Human Survival Strategies, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Accept the Impossible. Computer, end log. And please note, update station manifest to classify coffee as essential medical supplies. It's the only way to ensure Nova shows up for her examinations. P.S. Nova just discovered she can digest Centaurian crystal fungi, which normally requires 3 stomachs and the ability to metabolize rocks. She wants to know if we can start stocking them in the cafeteria as spicy snacks. Final log entry, station date 7251.8. Chief Medical Officer Blazenar recording. The Galactic Research Station will never be the same after Nova Chen. Neither will our understanding of what's possible in this universe. This morning, I watched her teach a group of junior researchers how to handle toxic samples without protective gear. Of course, none of them could actually do it, but the point was more about challenging our preconceptions, or as Nova puts it, thinking outside the containment field. We've already received applications from 50 other humans eager to join our research team. The Galactic Science Council is both terrified and thrilled. They're currently building a new wing of the station specifically designed for human researchers, complete with what Nova calls extra spicy environments for their comfort. Commander Prixis has officially updated the station's mission statement. It now reads, "To explore the most dangerous environments in the galaxy, and to try keeping up with the humans while they do it." Security Chief Corax's exoskeleton finally stopped glitching every time Nova does something impossible. Now it only glitches when she suggests improvements to our safety protocols. Dr. Lithera has started a support group for scientists struggling to accept human capabilities. They meet weekly in the now infamous Chamber 3, which Nova decorated with motivational posters showing humans doing various inadvisable things. As for me, I've learned to stop asking how when it comes to humans and start asking what next. Though I still keep the sedatives handy, not for Nova, of course, for everyone else. Computer, final log entry complete. And please note, if anyone needs me, I'll be in the medical bay, updating our species classification system. Again, apparently, humans can also log corrupted cause, coffee spill on console. Note, even the station's data systems are learning to adapt to human presence.